We are live. So can you tell everyone your name, please?
My name is Nurse Rena.
And how many years have you been a nurse for?
I've been in the nursing field for 20 years.
20 years. Okay. So, but we're going to talk about what happened during the COVID era, if you like.
Yes.
Right. Why don't you start us off with what you know, what you saw?
So I started off in my specialty is case management and utilization management, and so we work behind the scenes in the hospital. So I was in one of the local hospitals here in Fresno, working there when I saw the start of the pandemic, and then the tail end of it. I would case manage typically the ICUs and the inpatient floors in the hospitals.
Okay. And so what did you see? When did you start to think, what on earth is going on here? When did that suddenly come to you?
It was funny. In February, March of 2020, I remember the unit managers, the directors, they were saying, oh my God, this fake disease is coming off. It's just like the flu, just ignore it. It's just, it's not real. And then it started getting out in the news like around April, May, and that's when no one was coming to the hospitals, even though the televisions were saying the hospitals are bursting at the seams. It was quite the opposite. It was empty. No one was having elective surgeries. Everyone was scared to come to the ER. I was being sent home a lot because we did not have enough census, which is the term we use for the amount of patients in the hospital. We were being sent home a lot, staff. It was quite the opposite what they were saying.
Until
they came out with what the COVID mandates to impose, and once that started being imposed, that's when everyone was like, trying to line up. Suddenly they were saying, they went from, oh, this is nothing and this is fake, it's just a flu, to like, okay, we got to do this. And I was just talking with Charlie about what happened. Many hospitals lost quite a lot of revenue because the hospitals were empty. So now these mandates were set up where the hospitals can suddenly make money and recover from the 2-3 months where there was quite low census in the hospital. And so the hospitals went full on to impose these mandates onto the staff, onto patients and their families. And what I was doing, what I do is authorize the admission into the hospital. When you come into the ER, they see your symptoms, they say you need to be managed in the hospital, so they admit you. I would authorize those admissions into the hospital. So I go through everything, all the symptoms, all the diagnostic tests were done. And the COVID protocol was literally a diagnostic related group where that's a package you get paid. The hospital gets paid by assigning, I will assign a code to this a package of diagnosis, symptoms, the workup that's planned, whatever. And so when you had the COVID protocol, when you were under the COVID protocol, you would get 2 weeks in the hospital. And at that time when it started, like the first test would take 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks before you get the results. And so you would have to stay in the hospital, obviously, for the 2 weeks and get all this treatment, even though we do not know for sure you were COVID positive. Because anyone who had less than 88% oxygen saturation rate, anyone with complaints of shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, I would literally get them authorized just between those two, and the fact that they had supplemental oxygen in place, I would get them authorized for admission with that code to the hospital. The hospital gets a payment upfront for 2 weeks because that's how long it takes for the results to come out. And in the meantime, if you get inappropriate treatment, for instance, you put the oxygen on someone, if someone has COPD, their oxygen is limited in how the lungs are limited in how much oxygen it can have in there, because remember they have a lot of carbon dioxide in there. It's lost the elasticity to stretch and take stuff in. You put oxygen in there just from the cannula, that can escalate them. You put them on a ventilator, that will kill them. that will collapse their lungs. And so these people were being inappropriately treated with these protocols. This is what I was noticing from the get-go. I'm a critical care nurse, so before case management, my background is ER, trauma, critical care. And so I know the correct reason for being on these ventilators was your lungs are not working to do the work, therefore this machine will do it for you. So there was a huge financial gain for the hospitals when these patients would die early into the treatment. If someone has congestive heart failure, the lungs are filled with fluids. If someone has renal failure, their lungs are also filled with fluids because the kidneys and heart are not working well to get rid of this fluid. And they were putting them on these supplemental oxygen to just push oxygen in there. The ventilator was forcing oxygen in there, and that was collapsing their lungs. And they were dying within a day or two of being on these protocols. But you know what? The hospital got their money already up front because I authorized that with the insurance companies for the hospital to get paid.
So what would be a 2 month hospital protocol? How much is that?
So it's
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, it's it varied according to the facility, to different facilities, but they would get the lump sum payment. So the faster someone dies under that protocol, the more money the hospital will make. If you look at just the economics of that, you know, if they see the full 2 weeks, well, they will make less money. If the patient is able to die faster, you make more money. And so I do the checks and balances there with those things.
It must have been freaking you out.
It was terrifying once I realized this. And then the internists, which is the doctors for the ICU doctors are called internists. They would tell me that they're being forced by the hospital to put the patients on the death certificate that they died from COVID. And it was a play of words because the patients died while under the COVID protocol pending the results of the test. They did not die from COVID, but they were being told that they need to put COVID on the death certificate, which is falsification of information. And then that way the hospital will make money because they were making money if you died under the protocol and if you died under the vent. Okay, so this is the background information. A lot of maybe the regular nurses do not know because I work with I work at the background with the money, the authorizations, all that. And then there was padding of the COVID tests that I saw. Once upon a time, I was an infection control nurse with the state, and so I understand how these tests, how vaccines are administered, how tests are done, and how it has to be reported to public health, because I was working with public health. And what I saw in the hospitals as well was those because they needed the numbers to prove that they have all these cases, so they need all this money to the hospitals. So the more numbers you had, more positive COVID tests you have, the more money you would get to treat all these cases. And what I was seeing done, we actually had to talk about it in our meetings, was they were doing things like, you have to wait 10 days after the first test before you do the test again to make sure you're not positive. Well, tests were being done on people who were positive every day, and all those numbers were being sent to public health as new numbers, even though it's from this one same person. So that's what you call padding numbers. And that's what I saw too. So all these things I'm saying here, I reported on all these things.
Where did you report it?
Because it's the right thing to do.
No, where did you report?
Oh, I was at St. Agnes working.
So you would report it to your bosses?
No, because they're all supporting what was being done. What I also got outright in trouble for was when I tried to send the patients back to the nursing home once they were discharged. They have to go back to the nursing home. I facilitate the transfer of patients from the hospital when they're discharged to places they came from, or if they need placement, I place them. And so the requirements at the time, remember, in a nursing home, residents are sometimes 4 to 8 residents in one room, and they share one toilet. So anything communicable it spreads like wildfire in a nursing home. And so at the time, this was coming to about June, they came up with a rapid test, which was like in 45 minutes you would get the results. But at this time also, because elective surgeries were finally being allowed to happen, the hospital was saying, hey, we need these rapid tests for those coming in for surgery, and those who we're done with and they need to go, we need a bed, they can do the 2-week test, which is cheaper because the rapid test costs more money. So only the elective patients who are coming in where we can use the rapid test for them because we're making money off them. These people are done. Half the time they're coming here with the same problems. We're not making money off them. We'll use a cheap test, which takes 2 weeks. And so I was saying, 3 days. I think at that time there was like the 3-day one, and then there was the rapid one. You remember at first it took like 2 weeks, then it took like about 3 days, and then 45 minutes, and then we came down at the tail end of the whole pandemic, 15 minutes. So they were trying to say, I think it was a 3-day one. It took 3 days. And they were saying, you just do the test so we can say we did the test, but send them home. We need that bed now, because when that patient has had their surgery and they come out of the OR, we need that bed that they're laying on. So that was the rationale for this. And I said, I am not going to send someone to the nursing home with a test pending, because we're exposing them, everyone in the nursing home, in that room, to this person. Everyone shares the same room and the same toilet. They touch everything. If we do not know if they have this and we send them, that's harm. And I got chewed out, yelled at in front of everyone that I need to stop doing this and do what I'm told. And I said, no, I cannot, because I was holding these patients instead of sending them back. It's the ethical thing to do, because I believe do no harm. I am going to deliberately do harm by sending someone who may have COVID back to the nursing home in a room where they share it with maybe 4 people or 8 people. And so the next day I was on the phone talking with my mask ease off my face, and it was a whole setup to get rid of me. They said I need to leave, pack up my stuff and leave, and come back with a doctor's note that says I can talk on the phone with my mask eased off like this, because my mask was eased off like this and this quarter of my mouth was showing. I need a doctor's note that says I can do that because the person I'm talking to is a family member that was hard of hearing. And I cannot come back to work unless I have a note from a doctor that says I can ease the mask off my face to talk to someone on the phone who is hard of hearing, because with the mask on, it's muffled. And so I was made to leave my job. And they backdated my insurance to be as an HMO with a Native American Indian health, which I'm not Native American Indian. So therefore I was discriminated to get an appointment in order to get a doctor's note, because it said you're not Native American Indian. You can't get an appointment until maybe October, and we're talking about June here. We're in June. And the employee health was closed, and every time I called to get an appointment, I never got an answer. So this is what they did to me, because I stood up for what was right for the patient. Also, I saw how many family members were denied. I was also case manager in the oncology floor. Tons of hospice patients, and many patients I saw, they died alone with cancer in their bed. And this was just very horrific for me as well. And then once the vaccines came about and I went to a different hospital to work, then the persecution happened in a different way to nurses and to the patients, because patients were being denied medical care if they did not take the vaccine when they come into the ER. You can't come into the hospital property if you're not vaccinated, if you're not wearing a mask. For me, the hospital I was at this time, once I left St. Agnes, because they made sure I couldn't come back, They wanted all the nurses, all the staff in the hospital, they wanted that hospital, Adventist Health, to be 100% vaccinated. I said, no, I am not going to get it. So then they made life hard for any nurse or medical personnel who refused the vaccine to be able to work. For instance, the mandates in the hospital for staff were that if you don't have the COVID vaccine, you have to get tested before you clock in to your shift. And so they would have to set up according to departments, like maybe at the station or some room. For me, case management, we had to go to the cafeteria. Monday to Friday, it has to have someone there with all the supplies to do the test. At first they started off, and then afterwards, to make it harder for me, I would spend half hour, because they stop having the person there to do the test. They'll say, oh, they're not doing it today. Go find some other department. You go to some other department, they'll be like, well, these tests are limited and it's only for their staff who work in our department, so you can't have it. So 45 minutes later, 1 hour later, I cannot clock in to start my job, because I'm literally bouncing from place to place trying to find someone in the hospital who will do this test for me, this rapid, to say it's negative, so I can start my job to get some money to care for my patients. This is what was done to me at Adventist Health. And then they set it up where I was just, chewed out, by administration, by my fellow nurses, by directors, openly saying, I'm making it harder. I'm not, doing my job on time. I'm clocking in late. Well, you guys are doing things to make sure that I clock in late so that you can pad it up and say, I have all these late starts to my job. I'm not a good employee. That means to fire you because you're late so often. This is what they were doing to staff. This is what was done to me because I refused to take the COVID vaccine. And then they outright just set it up to fire me from the job, because they realized I was talking to other staff and saying, you don't have to take this, you need to stand up for your rights. I was telling patients, hey, maybe you can go to another hospital that's not being like this. You don't have to take it. I am seeing all these side effects. They don't want anyone speaking up, educating patients and families about this. They will find ways to get rid of you without outright firing you. But they set me up and fired me from Adventist.
So fired twice. So now where are you going?
Yes. So then what I had to do, they made sure after that I cannot get employment. It was made sure that I was told by the person, EDD, when someone is fired, that's what EDD is set up for. If you're fired, you're in a crisis, you're unemployed, you get money. It's a fraction of your salary. So the person at the EDD took about 2 months to get back to me and said that he called Adventist and they said that I did not follow directions, and because of that I was fired, and therefore I am not entitled to employment, EDD employment. I was like, wow, that's something new, because last time I checked, that's the reason why this was set up in the first place. This program, it was set up for people being fired. And I was told that they're following orders from Adventist Health to say I am not eligible to collect unemployment. So this is the level this hospital, which people say it's religious and it's supposed to be good. They did this. That was Adventist Health in Hanford.
And so what are you doing now? Have you got something?
So I have had to work. I am a single mom. I have a 12-year-old. I have a 16-year-old. She just turned 17 last week. And for the last 2 years, I've had to be away from my kids, working in other parts of California, north and south. I see them about 4 days out of the month typically, because they have put me on the no hire list here. I was told I was not welcomed at any of the community hospitals. I am banned from all Adventist Health hospitals nationwide. I'm banned from all Trinity hospitals, which is the hospital system that owns St. Agnes here in Fresno. And they've made sure that, I just came back. I have to do travel contracts all over, where I have to be like homeless. I can't be here, which is my home, because they make sure that I can't get any form of income and no form of employment. And I really wanted to talk about this because this is the length and breadth these hospitals have gone through to punish those nurses who stood up to dare say, it's my body, my choice. What you're doing to the patients, it's wrong. You're supposed to sit down, shut up, and take it. That's how you're allowed to work here in this town. If you're like me, you're not allowed to come to this town. They'll make sure that you're financially destitute so that they will run you out of town. And that's what's going on with me currently here. They're making sure I wrapped up my last contract in January. I was working in Southern California. I have a lot of problems with my kids. I want to be there for them. But they're making sure that I can't get a job here because I'm literally on the no hire list. So even out of the hospital, if I go work in a doctor's office, a doctor can lose his privileges in the hospital. If I work with, say, a home health agency or a hospice agency, the referrals that they get from the hospital, well, that will be cut off. So choose her or choose the referrals. This is the length and breadth they go.
Wow. And so, but how are you earning money now?
So it's savings. And of course, when my savings are dwindled, they count on me to leave here, leave my kids, abandon them basically, and go work in other places. And that's what's been going on for the last 3 years, basically.
It's horrific.
It's horrific, yeah. My kids have a lot of problems and are failing school because of these things. And they're aware. It's been very hard for them. They're aware of it. And I know I'm not the only nurse that's going through this, or the only doctor, because they've vilified nurses and doctors who've stood up like me and reported the wrong and stood against these mandates. It's terrible.
It's shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so proud of you speaking out.
Yeah.
A quick question. When we had a nurse sit on the sofa saying that she was in the billing department or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that because we're seeing that the vaccinated
Yes.
are being treated a lot better than the
Oh,
unvaccinated.
yes, definitely. That's the whole, we'll literally have become divided between the vaccinated and unvaccinated. Like I was told as a nurse, I should die. I was told by patients that I should die because I want to kill people by not taking the vaccine. I was told this in my face, in front of people on the job. It was very hard to take that type of abuse and death wish from people that just months before were glad to get the care that I would, give to them and help them the way I would help them. Suddenly I went from being awesome to being I should be dead.
But this nurse was also telling us
crazy.
that when there was a drop-down menu
Mm-hmm.
with the ventilators, and that
Yes.
you could do the unvaccinated and vented, but there was never a vaccinated and vented
No.
tab.
No, because in order to just be admitted, under the protocol, you had to get the shot. You had to get the shot, and then I have a whole other thing to talk about, the remdesivir, because so after the shot came out, it was all the persecution to take the shot or else you can. But then patients were being denied care as well if they refuse to take the remdesivir. Well, that's part of the protocol, and if you're under the protocol, you got to take it or else they're going to discharge you, because what's the point of you being here? It was despicable. But I saw when I would admit the patients once remdesivir became the protocol on all hospitals, and I was just talking to Charlie about, that one single clinical trial that Fauci mentioned that made it okay for remdesivir to be mandated under all the protocols in all U.S. hospitals. It was like 20% like fatality with that, but that was covered up. That's like a whole other thing. I'm reading this book here. It's all about clinical trials by this UK doctor. It was published in 2013, and it's about how all the pharmaceutical companies He's a surgeon doctor in the UK, and it's about how all the pharmaceutical companies, they adjust the clinical trials results, and how that adjusted report is sent to medical journals, and all doctors, nurses, hospitals, we all go off these medical journals that publish these clinical trials. And this book really goes in depth details about how trials are cut short because it's not looking good, how the report is adjusted, and the lack of transparency with these things. It goes to the medical journals, and these medical journals are getting huge donations or are owned by a lot of these pharmaceutical companies. And I recommend that book to people to read. That's in the local library, because a book like that will not be on Amazon or the Barnes and Noble, because it goes against the entire narrative about how hospitals are misled.
I don't know this book, but I do know Bad Science, and this guy was not our friend in the past, so it's interesting. Maybe.
So what I haven't read Bad Science.
Not the most friendly UK doctor, I would say.
Yeah, but he did a really good job to expose the pharmaceutical companies in this one, because there was one where I just finished this weekend. I'm not done with the whole book, but there was this instance where Procter & Gamble had this osteoarthritis drug that needed to go through clinical trials. And with clinical trials, I once was hired for that job years ago, so I know what happens. Like, it was for an IV drug. You have to have enough people who are willing to stay the entire course, and you have to note all the side effects as the days go by, the common side effects, the short-term side effects, the long-term side effects. And Procter & Gamble, the clinical trial was not going well. It was stopped. And then the professor at the university who was carrying out the trial, he was asked to sign off on this report that Procter & Gamble had came up with. They came up with a report, and they just need his signature on it, and he refused to give a signature. So they went ahead, and I guess the signature was forged, and it was sent to the medical journal. And then when he found out that, he's like, I did not sign off on this report to say that the clinical trial was okay. It was published in a very reputable medical journal. And these journals, which nurses, doctors, and hospitals, they go by these journals because they're so reputable and say, hey, this is safe. Let's implement it. Let's start prescribing it. Let's start putting it in our protocols. Let's start putting it in our plan of treatment for these disease processes. And that's how we go off it. As a nursing student, that's all I went by to verify the efficacy of a drug or the safety of a drug, is by going off these journals. And when he reported that they falsified his signature for this report, the university fired him, and he was placed on a gag order by the court. So this is just one of the incidents in this book. So I mean, I do not know him in Bad Science, but I'm saying, wow, this is I was like, this is very, very huge expose of what they're doing. But you know what? This is exactly what they did with the remdesivir. This is exactly what they did with the COVID vaccine. There was no clinical trial to validate the safety of this vaccine and of the remdesivir.
All right. Well, listen, because we've got another story coming within half an hour, but I do want to get you on CHD TV.
Yes.
So we're going to hear more from you. And thank you for